Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the potential split in Cabinet over the damaging Australia trade deal that Boris Johnson and Liz Truss seem to be on an inevitable course for delivering. Another Brexit humiliation that will be sold as a great Brexit triumph, and by the time people realise the truth, they'll be long gone anyway. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So in a vaguely amusing twist to the Australia trade deal saga, Environment Minister George Eustice said that any agreement with Australia must be on the right terms for UK farmers. Now, I talked about the deal earlier this week in my video on PMQs, but it can essentially be characterised like this. British farmers produce a fair amount of beef and lamb. We were quite good at that. This is popular in Europe, where not that many other countries produce it. We therefore have an appreciative market for the meat, and it's right on our doorstep. Australia, on the other hand, represents a market that is 10,000 miles away, with all the extra greenhouse gases which would come with transporting it that distance. And they also produce quite a lot of beef and lamb themselves. So Europe, close, and wants our beef and lamb. Australia, far away, and has enough beef and lamb of their own. With this in mind, Boris Johnson's trade strategy is to make it harder for us to sell beef and lamb to the close-by neighbours who want it, and easier to sell it to the far-away people who don't. That is Brexit. That is Brexit in a nutshell. Making it harder to sell goods to people who want them and for whom we can get them to them quickly, and saying that we should compensate for that lost trade by selling to people who don't. Like shutting up your successful beachwear store in California to try and start up again in Greenland. And the thing about these post-Brexit trade deals is that they are all about the headlines, aren't they? The government can rely upon the usual suspects in the media to boast of all the trade deals that we're doing in record time, as if it disproves the Brexit naysayers. Not a word will be published about how terrible they are. I said recently that when Liz Truss, the cabinet minister who's arranging them, was asked why she's pursuing a trade deal with Australia that is worth about 8 or 9 times as much to them as it is to us, she didn't see the problem. I said that this is because she isn't actually a Brexit believer. Her role is to get trade deals quickly. Obviously, the only way to get a trade deal quickly is to concede everything to the other side. So that's what she's doing. That's what Boris Johnson did with the EU. Now, to someone who actually wants the best for the UK, that would sound like utter madness. Of course, you would take longer to get the better deal, and that might explain why there is a potential split in cabinet, if indeed there is. Always difficult to know because you are reliant upon media reports. No cabinet ever admits that it is split. George Eustice, for example, might well be going along with this, but lets it be known that he will only support it if it's a good deal for UK farmers, so that he can disown it later on if it blows up in his face. But the split might well be down to the mad and the pretending to be mad. It's been said many times before, not least by me, that when it comes to Brexit, the reason why the Conservatives appear united behind it, when the issue always used to split the party in the past, is because it's not that they've all now agreed, it's that those who actually believe in it, and then there are those who don't, but they are pretending to believe in it because that's just what you have to do now. We know Liz Truss is in this number, having ridiculed leavers before the referendum. Even Boris Johnson argued strongly against leaving the EU for years, right up to a few weeks before the referendum, when he was persuaded by Michael Gove that it would help him become Prime Minister. What you have here are ambitious Tories who, for the purposes of their own career, pretended to support Brexit. They pretend to be mad. Now, consider how someone like this views the UK's place in the world. They know that Brexit is bad for the UK because they're not actually insane, and for the UK's standing in the world. So they accept that for the sake of their career, they have to do something that harms their own country. Well, once you're in that mindset, of course you don't care about signing trade deals that are seen as humiliating by anyone who understands them and damaging to the economic prospects of its people. And the trade deals that threaten farming are particularly bad because the threat posed by Brexit to, say, manufacturing, that's bad. And it means we can't sell as much to the world. So our tax receipts are down. So we can't afford good public services. We lose jobs. especially high quality jobs, hits our tax receipts again and the standard of public services even more. But with fishing and farming, there's a concern beyond the economic impact. As a proportion of our overall economy, fishing and farming are quite small, but food is an essential of life. By increasing the amount of food that we import as a proportion of our overall intake, we increase food insecurity. It's always better to be able to produce goods of national importance yourself, or at least reduce your reliance on imports. Having a reliance on imports of anything means you are in a weak position on the world stage. Reducing the amount of food that we produce for ourselves means that we risk shortages when global conditions create a problem in imports. It's a fair weather policy. It works on the notion that we'll always be able to import what we need, and so we don't need to produce it ourselves. But what about when trading routes are disrupted, as happened when someone parks a bloody big ship in the Suez Canal, or we find ourselves in an international diplomatic crisis? Those imports are threatened and we get shortages. Shortages of some things is one thing, it will annoy the middle classes. Shortages of food, fuel, steel, power, medicines and so on can create a serious national emergency. But anyway, back to the split. And it got me to thinking, perhaps there are genuine Brexiteers who actually do think that the UK can triumph outside the EU. They obviously would be against a trade deal that actually gives away so much for not much in return, just for the sake of getting cheap headlines quickly. Whereas those who do know how damaging Brexit is have already trained their brain to accept this reality and so value the headlines over the country's success. So we potentially have the perverse scenario whereby maybe genuine Brexiteers are arguing against these damaging Brexit trade deals, and those who thought that we should have remained are wanting to go full steam ahead with them. Not that the split, if it even exists, has to be predicated along those lines. It might be as simple as being worried about the electoral reality of trying to retain seats in rural areas when you've just turned them into wastelands. What are they supposed to do then? Say, don't worry, foreign farming companies will buy up the land and employ you on minimum wage to drive their profit margins? Hence the bribes that the government are now working on. They're attempting to compensate farmers with payouts in order to keep a lid on the situation. But, and I'm no expert on rural affairs, this is how I'd see it. So you compensate the farmers for their loss of business, about £100,000 they're trying to bribe them with. Okay, but the farmers themselves, that is the people who actually own those farms and get that compensation, only represent a tiny number of actual voters. The bulk of the voters in a rural constituency electing those Conservative MPs are the people whose jobs depended upon those farms. There's no compensation for them. If the government are now talking about increasing their compensation offer to keep farmers quiet, how do they intend to still gain votes when they've lost jobs in the area? And this will be no hypothetical situation. For all the anguish over Labour's losses in the Red War, they have been making inroads into the Blue War. And another thing, the idea of the compensation is to get current farmers to retire and allowing what they call new entrants. Now, a new entrant just buying a farm isn't going to make it any more successful than people have been doing it for years. Now, here's the other thing about rural communities, and this is likely the same in a lot of countries, I would have thought. It's that they like stability. There's their way of doing things, very traditional. A load of outsiders buying up the land en masse in order to pursue the only business plan that can survive Brexit, which is not going to be simply one person buying a farm off another. It's going to be buying loads of farms, low cost, low quality, high output, intensive farming, which is going to massively change their landscape. These are people who throw a hissy fit if someone erects a mobile phone mast or a wind turbine. Imagine how they are likely to react when massive foreign farming corporations move in, send someone over to tear up their landscape. Imagine if it's an EU company. Ooh. Maybe that's what the split's all about. Not that it's likely to matter. We hear of splits all the time. I've no doubt that some will be true, but I've yet to see a situation where Boris Johnson has changed his position as a result of it. Not that Johnson will care, and maybe some of his ministers shouldn't. The proposal in the Australia deal is supposedly now for tariff-free trade to kick in after 15 years. So we didn't give ourselves an implementation period for the EU deal, which created massive problems with trade, but we are planning on putting an implementation period of 15 years on the Australia trade deal. They won't care then. In fact, they'd love to have all their Brexit consequences delayed by 15 years someone else's problem then. They can spend the next few years, the rest of their political career, claiming how brilliant it is and how clever they are. Someone else's problem when it all hits home. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.